Hey, everybody, and welcome to another weekly walk. And today I'm very excited to be here with you today because today is, of course, June, which means that we are celebrating Pride Month here in New York City, which is home to one of the largest and most active LGBT communities anywhere in the planet. Now, in honor of Pride Month, we're going to examine the life and work of one of the pioneering individuals who helped shape this landscape to what it is today. So today we are going to be taking a close look at Bruce Kelly's Central Park. But let's go ahead and begin with our tour. And let's start, of course, with the housekeeping. So feel free to use the chat feature on your Zoom control bar. If you have any comments, you can also use the Q&A feature. My colleagues, Juan and Desiree, they are going to be in the back end. They're going to answer any questions that you folks might have. And of course, there will also be polls as well. You'll see them pop up on your screen, and I'll share the results once everybody has voted. And of course, our mission here at the Conservancy is to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. All right, folks. So let's go ahead and start right now. So within the wide world of Central Park history, there have, of course, been many different names associated with its design, construction, and management, including folks like Frederick Law Olmsted, Calvert Vaux, Robert Moses, Elizabeth Barlow Rogers. The list goes on and on. But one name that might not be as well known today is Bruce Kelly, who during the 1980s was actually a key figure in restoring the park back to its former glory. Now, Bruce Kelly, he was a landscape architect who worked with the Central Park Conservancy when it was just getting started. He also worked quite a bit with the New York City Parks Department. He was heavily inspired by the works of his predecessor, Frederick Law Olmsted. So he helped revitalize long neglected areas like Shakespeare Garden and the Ramble. Now, besides helping with restoration work, Kelly also created one of the most enduring and most celebrated landscapes in Central Park today. That, of course, is called Strawberry Fields. In fact, you can actually see the image of Strawberry Fields as well as the Imagine Memorial right up front. Very tragically, he did pass away almost 30 years ago, but Bruce Kelly's influence can still be seen around us. Now, today we are going to be taking a look at some of these iconic areas that he helped to preserve, or in some cases, design all on his own. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with the map. And for today, we're going to start from West 77th Street and go around the western portion of the lake. We're going to enter the Ramble at Oak Bridge, then continue on down towards Cherry Hill, areas that were restored by landscape architects, including Bruce Kelly, back in the 1980s. We're going to end off our tour over at Strawberry Fields. All right, so we'll start off right here at 77th Street, which features the bust of a very famous German philosopher by the name of Alexander von Humboldt. Now, Humboldt is a great start for a walk since he wrote quite a lot about the connections between nature, history, and culture. And of course, as visitors to Central Park, I think that interplay is very much alive and well today. There's also a really great placement for the statue since it's just directly across from the American Museum of Natural History. And now we're making our way into the park now from the west side. And as we turn left, we arrive at Balcony Bridge. Balcony Bridge carries both pedestrians and street traffic, or rather park traffic. So things like NYPD vehicles, parked vehicles, EMS vehicles, they're all present right here in the drive. And of course, you also see cyclists, joggers, and park visitors as well. The bridge gets its name from the fact that it's got these balconies that look out over the lake. Today, the view is somewhat obscured by the foliage below. But however, back in the 19th century, the views, I believe, would have been much more expansive since you didn't really have all these trees blocking the way. Take note as well of the balconies on either end of the bridge. So very different from today. If you actually take a look at an image of the same exact area in the 21st century, you're going to see lots of trees behind it as well as directly in front of it as well. So continuing on, right around the corner, we have Oak Bridge, which, believe it or not, was actually created just about 14 years ago. So this is actually the third bridge to be on this site. The very first one was designed by Calvert Vaux back in the 1850s, and apparently it was made out of oak wood, as the name might suggest. However, over time, it eventually rotted out. So by 1935, the bridge was then replaced by a much more utilitarian crossing that unfortunately didn't really have as much ornate details. And that was called Bank Rock Bridge, which is named after the adjoining bay just off towards the north. Now, in 2009, the Conservancy then embarked on a project to restore the bridge back to its historic look. And of course, this is what it looks like today. These days, the bridge provides some of the most picturesque views of the lake and the city behind it. Now, despite its name, Oak Bridge isn't actually made of oak any longer. Nowadays, it uses modern materials like steel and cast aluminum. Now, projects like these, I think, really highlight the Conservancy's work in the 21st century. One of our main focuses is to bring the historic Olmsted landscape back to life. And we couldn't have done it without the efforts of very passionate and hardworking individuals who really cared about their park. Okay, so from here, we're going to make our way into the Ramble. Now, the Ramble, as we've learned on many, many walks together, best represents the original designer's intentions to create a naturalistic paradise. So basically, that means that it is quite easy to get lost in here with its dense collection of native trees, shrubs, and of course, large rock outcrops. Now, walking through here, you really feel like you're hiking through another world. So far, far away from the hustle and bustle of New York City. Sometimes you might even get lost in its winding paths, which is actually something that a lot of us even do, even seasoned park visitors and workers such as myself. But that, I think, was the point. It was designed to fully immerse people in their natural environment. So here in this historic image from the early 1900s, we can actually see the Ramble Cascade along the western part of the woodland around 1905 or so. Now, right around that same time period, more than 40 years after it was first created, the Ramble still very much served as an oasis for many New Yorkers. However, by the early decades of the 20th century, you really start to see some signs of deterioration throughout the park. So woodlands like the Ramble, which was supposed to feature New York's natural beauty, began to be overgrown with invasive plants like ailanthus and knotweed, which unfortunately choked off many of the native trees. Rustic wood structures like bridges, fences, and benches, they all started to fall apart as well. Now, in 1980, the Central Park Conservancy was founded by concerned citizens who realized that the park would continue in its decline unless something was to be done. Now, this early version of the Conservancy then hired some of the top names in landscape architecture to help restore the park. Now, among these folks were Bruce Kelly, who had just graduated from Columbia University with a degree in historic preservation. And he had also just started his own private firm. He was recruited by park administrator Elizabeth Barlow Rogers to help participate in a number of projects like cleaning up and restoring the Ramble. So here in this photo from 1981, we can actually see a few of these early park staff and volunteers working hard to keep the woodland beautiful. Now, around the same time period, Bruce Kelly also worked on creating an exhibit for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and that exhibit was called The Art of the Olmsted Landscape. The exhibit focused on Frederick Law Olmsted's nature-oriented design, and it did a really incredible job of bringing Olmsted's work back to public attention. It was then published by the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission as a short book, and it's actually still widely read today. This, among many other projects revolving around Central Park, really propelled Bruce Kelly to stardom in the world of landscape architecture. So as we walk around the winding paths of the modern Ramble surrounded by large native trees and plantings, it really is important for us to recognize the importance or the influence that these landscape designers had in the 20th century. Without folks like Bruce Kelly serving as stewards of the land, Olmsted's vision might not have been fully realized like it has been today. Okay, everyone, so let's actually go ahead and pause right here and conduct our poll of the day. And today, since we are talking about the idea of park stewardship, I wanted to ask, have you ever done any volunteer work at Central Park? Now, volunteers and other staff are, of course, very crucial to the care and maintenance of Central Park. So we have thousands of volunteers doing little things like gardening, greeting visitors, doing cleanups, basically all these things. All right, so let's go ahead and see the results right now. Kind of looks like most of us have already voted, so I'm going to end off the poll. And let's go ahead and share these results. All right, so it actually looks like about 86% of you have not yet done any volunteer work at Central Park. And I do understand, since many of you actually live way outside of New York City. But of course, our park really does run on volunteer work. In fact, if you folks are interested in doing any sort of volunteer work for Central Park, you can always go to our website, centralparknyc.org/volunteer. We have many positions available, and of course, all this really helps us out quite a bit. All right, so let's go ahead now and continue on with our tour. And moving on, let's go ahead and take a look at the map. From here, we're going to continue through the Ramble and into Cherry Hill. So to do that, we're going to need to cross over Bow Bridge. And as we turn right, we come across this fun little surprise as we're greeted by a family of mallard ducks. So we got a mama duck on the right-hand side, followed by her two baby ducklings, basically following her into the water. Now, you might see ducklings like these in some parts of the park right now, since we're right in the middle of the season when their eggs are laid and hatched. So you really gotta love the beauty of Central Park in summer. All right, and as we head up Cherry Hill, we see the sign reminding us of the Conservancy's role in continuing the restoration work carried out by our predecessors, including Bruce Kelly. So as with many other things, one important aspect of that is the cooperation of the public. So we do ask that when you do see signs like these, to please stay off the grass. Now, our operations staff, we work hard to keep these lawns nice and green. Now, if we keep making our way up the path, we soon will arrive at the top of Cherry Hill. And of course, right at the center, we have the Cherry Hill Fountain, which was created by Jacob Ray Mould. The fountain has, of course, had a very long history at this spot. Mould designed it back in the 1860s as a concourse for horse carriages to turn around. In fact, the basin of the fountain still functions as a watering trough for many thirsty horses. So like many other areas in the park, the Conservancy has restored this area a few times already. So most recently, we did a major restoration project back in 2012 when we added new plantings and laid down a permeable surface for rainwater runoff so it doesn't damage the lake during periods of heavy storms. Before restoration, however, Cherry Hill had long seen better days, like so much of Central Park. So by the 1980s, you would have seen it was just a mere parking lot. So no longer was it like the beautiful concourse that was dominated by pedestrians back in its heyday. Now, through the efforts of the Conservancy, Cherry Hill was then cleaned up by the decade's end. And nowadays, of course, it functions as an excellent spot for viewing the lake beside it. Today, you're still going to see horse carriages here, but instead of cars and automobiles, they've now been replaced by pedicabs as well as visitors on foot. All right, and continuing on, we now make a right turn at Terrace Drive, and we follow that roadway as it winds past the information kiosk staffed by our volunteers. Just up ahead is this larger-than-life statue of the Massachusetts Senator and Secretary of State Daniel Webster, which was originally supposed to be at the mall, but because of its massive size, it was placed here instead in 1876. All right, so from here, we're going to make our way towards the next few stops on the tour, and we're going to end off our walk over at Strawberry Fields. Now, after crossing the drive, we then come to Strawberry Fields, which is named after John Lennon's favorite Beatles song, Strawberry Fields Forever. The whole area is actually a living memorial to the former Beatle. So this was actually created back in 1985 with a donation from Yoko Ono, who wanted to preserve the area as a memorial to her late husband. It was actually intended as an international garden of peace. And it's laid out in a way that it contains a number of glades and grassy lawns that are surrounded by beautiful plantings like rhododendrons, English elms. You'll see ginkgo trees in here, and even Yulan magnolias from China. So this whole landscape, I think, is perfect for any and all reflection. Now, besides ornamental plantings from around the world, you'll also find native wildflowers like these thistles. Now, thistles are usually thought of as an invasive plant that can take over entire fields, but there are also native varieties that are important for pollinators, such as bees. Usually they can be spotted by the very spiky appearance of their flowers. So right around this time of the year, you'll start to see these thistles with these incredible looking flowers. And just up ahead in the path, we can see this native Carolina rose. Now, as its name suggests, the Carolina rose is in fact a member of the rose family, but it really doesn't have as many of the showy petals as its cultivated cousins. So this one, for example, as you folks can see, it really only has 5 petals. However, because it serves as an important food source for moths and birds, it's now being planted in many home gardens and, of course, in many landscapes and parks such as Central Park. Plus, it's much, much easier to care for, which is always appreciated as a home gardener. All right, and tying the Strawberry Fields landscape together is the Imagine Memorial to John Lennon, just up ahead on the path. The memorial was donated by the city of Naples, Italy, at the time of its opening in 1985. Now, this landscape, of course, honors one of the most famous figures in the music industry, and as such, it sees some of the densest foot traffic in all of Central Park. However, even though the connection to John Lennon dominates over this area, Strawberry Fields can also be viewed as an unofficial memorial to other people that have passed on, such as George Harrison, Jerry Garcia, and of course, Bruce Kelly, the star of our show for today. So as we've seen, Kelly was instrumental in adding elements of Olmsted's influence throughout Central Park, especially when he restored areas like the Ramble. Nature was a major part of the original park landscape as it was drawn up by Olmsted and Calvert Vaux, and Kelly really wanted to highlight that. So in his design for Strawberry Fields, Bruce Kelly went for a more naturalistic and bucolic feel rather than focusing on the statues and stone buildings. So there is a reason why the memorial to John Lennon consists of simple tiles, as opposed to maybe, say, like a giant statue like the one of Daniel Webster. So in addition to his work in Central Park, Kelly was also very active in the private sector. So he took commissions from stars like Carolyn Rome and Saul Steinberg. He also went on to design the Eleanor Roosevelt Memorial over in Riverside Park, which was posthumously unveiled in 1996. Tragically, Bruce Kelly died in 1993 at the age of 44 of complications from HIV/AIDS. However, his impact lives on today in the Central Park landscape. So without his keen Olmstedian eye, Central Park really would not just be the same as it is today. All right, everyone, that about wraps things up for me for today. First of all, I do want to thank you all so much. Now, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the stories of individuals that have shaped Central Park, please do go to our website. You can check out our Pride Tour this month. Just go to centralparknyc.org/tours. We do have a few spots available for the 23rd and the 24th. Now, you can find the link for that in the chat. But otherwise, I thank you all so much for joining us here at the Central Park Conservancy. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just use the handle at Central Park NYC. All right, everyone, thank you all so much. I do thank you all so much for joining us today. So again, have a good day, folks. Take care.